Hi and welcome back to the channel. I'm Steven today with a 1 year later camera review, and we are taking a look at the Nikon Z30. I personally think that this is a very underrated camera both for photography and videos as well. I purchased it in around April 2022, I think, with the main goal of using it for videos for my YouTube channel. Not this channel, my other channel, X-Kurgani Studio, by the way. This has been my primary A-roll camera for the past 1 year or so, but occasionally I also take it out for street photography and also toy photography, scale model photography, which is my area of expertise, by the way. Now, my own hot take, my own opinion on this Z30 is that not only it is very underrated, there are a lot of bias going on in YouTube. Yeah, where reviewers heavily favor Sony, especially the ZV-E10, and I am referring to the first generation ZV-E10, not the Mark II. Whenever they do comparisons on which camera is the one to buy when it comes for vlogging, right? All because of one very simple reason. Well, two of them actually. The Sony E-mount and their lens ecosystem, surely enough, that is superior, no arguing that. And the second reason being autofocus performance. I find the autofocus argument when it comes to content creation and vlogging is not exactly that valid, because when you are holding out the camera like this, talking to camera, your face is the only face the camera needs to focus on. It does not need to bother with any background characters behind you. And for that purpose, the Nikon Z30 never misses. I would comfortably hold it and let the autofocus track my eye. It always nails focus all of the time. And even more so in studio, once again, if the camera is on a tripod and the camera is filming me, one single face over here, it never misses. To say that Nikon Z30 is a poor choice for content creators, for vloggers, I don't get it. There are so many things that made the Z30 better than the first generation Sony ZV-E10 when it comes to video. The first thing, the most obvious one being that the Z30 can do 4K 30p video with no crop at all. But somehow, 99% of YouTubers conveniently ignore the fact that the Sony ZV-E10 crops the 4K video as if it did not exist. Like they are conveniently leaving out the negatives of the camera. And then there is the complaint of no IBIS and no 10-bit video, which once again also applies to the first generation Sony ZV-E10, conveniently being ignored. Of course, the new Mark II, the ZV-E10 Mark II now has 10-bit video, which is great. As cinetone and all that stuff, that is great. For me personally, I would love to have that for sure, 10-bit video, which is also why I will be replacing my Z30 soon with a camera that is capable of 10-bit video. But all this while, I have been using this camera for vlogging outdoors and also filming it indoors. 8-bit video has never been a problem to me, especially indoors in studio, right? Where the amount of dynamic range you need when it comes to editing later on after filming, you're looking at 2 or 3 stops of adjustment at most maximum. Outside of autofocus performance and lens selection, in many other categories, I find the Z30 to be way superior. Now, this is one more fact that most reviewers do not mention, is that the Nikon Z30 is actually weather sealed. The main body, not the kit lens of course. So if you were to swap out this lens with any of Nikon's S-line lenses, prime lenses or zoom lenses, this whole thing is weather sealed. You can use it outside in the rain, light rain of course, and this thing would hold up. And I am the kind of person who would really abuse my gear. I let my D850 drench in the waterfall, in the rain, and the thing still works. I use cameras the way they are meant to be used. And in that sense, this thing is so much better built than the ZV-E10, which feels a bit plasticky, a bit toy-like, but some people prefer that because that results in lesser weight. Understandable. The next thing is that, yeah, this is actually a pro feature. Up until just a few years ago, when you were buying DSLRs, in entry-level models, you will never get a front deal over here, and you will never get additional customizable function buttons in front at the grip over here, where this Nikon Z30 has 2 function FN buttons right in front. That is amazing. As for the button layouts, the menu and the details overall on the physical controls, I'm not going into details because if you are an existing Nikon user, be it a DSLR or mirrorless, once you pick this one up, you'll figure out very easily, even without reading any tutorials, right? The next feature which I find incredibly useful is both the fully articulated screen and the red tally light in front. I have experienced so many times with my other cameras like the Nikon Z6 that is filming me right now. The screen does not flip to the front. There is no LED light or nothing that tells me the camera is running or not. And if the battery runs out or the memory card is full and the recording just cuts off, I don't know at all until after I'm done running my mouth in front of it, only to realize that the camera is no longer recording, and that is extremely annoying. So having a flip out screen with a red frame when the video begins recording, plus a backup from the red tally lamp, that makes this an ideal vlogging camera, self-filming camera no matter how I look it. I regard this as the better camera than the ZV-E10 for this reason, together with the other features I just mentioned. On the side of this camera, there is a mic jack, but no headphone jack as usual. At this price point, you won't get a headphone jack. And you can charge this camera over USB-C, so you can plug in and the camera will go on forever unless it overheats. Now that is the biggest caveat of this camera, which we'll get into the details in a second. Firstly, about the USB charging, I used one of my older Samsung chargers, fast chargers, but that was like 18 watts and it isn't enough. So if the camera is turned on and in use and I were to plug in a charger, the camera is not charging at all. I think I would need a 40 or 60 watt charger. But if I were to turn off the camera and plug in the same charger, it would charge up nicely in about a couple of hours, which is quite long to charge like 1000 plus milliamp battery. Moving on to the next positive about this camera, and the most important one to me, is that it does not have a 30-minute recording limit. I bought this camera solely for the no 30-minute recording limit, you see. In my other channel, X Kurgani Studio, where I do news videos on new products, new figurines, new hobby stuff, each video can go over an hour long very easily, and none of my other cameras up to last year could do over 30 minutes in one take, and that was extremely frustrating as well. I bought Z30 simply for the no limit video recording in 1080p. 4K 30 video on this camera also does not have a 30-minute limit, except it would overheat before you even reach the 30-minute mark. My own experience is that around 20 minutes in 27 degrees Celsius room temperature, which is the normal room temperature over here in Asia, 27 or so, plus minus 1 degrees, it will overheat at around 20 minutes of 4K 30 video. And this is the biggest single negative I have with the Z30. My only major complaint, in fact. Not to say that the Z30 is an incompetent camera for 4K video. 20 minutes in 27 Celsius is a very respectable amount for a small camera like this. The problem is that my usage pattern makes me a very heavy user. Not to mention, I am not a smooth talker. I stutter a lot, I speak the wrong words a lot, and I need to retake. And that lengthens any video that I film. And when we look at it that way, 20 minutes is not enough for me. However, I have heard of stories about the likes of Canon R50, for example, has a similar issue where it couldn't record 4K 30 video for very long. It would also overheat and cut off. So I believe that this sort of limitations in 4K for tiny entry-level cameras like this is normal at this point. It is not a problem unique to the Z30. Moving on to photography. A lot of crybabies out there.
It does not have a viewfinder. This camera is useless for photography.
I've lost count how many times I heard the no EVF complaint on the Z30, but there are so many people that are out of touch with reality out there because, 10 out of 10 times I hand my camera to a complete stranger or a friend who is not a photographer. be it my Z6 or my Z30 or my D850, 10 out of 10 occasions, they would be shooting photographs with the rear screen. They will touch the screen or they will press the shutter button looking at the rear screen. None of them has ever taken the initiative to use the viewfinder. And that is the kind of world we live in, where people prefer to use a rear LCD simply because of their familiarity with smartphone cameras, right? If you need an EVF or any kind of viewfinders, there is always the Nikon Z50 and ZFC, for example. No one is forcing you to buy a Z30. Image quality is about what you would expect from this 21 megapixel sensor, the same one in ZFC and Z50. Is 21 megapixels enough? Some of you may feel that it is low. Yes, indeed, I love megapixels, the more the better, to a certain extent. But for casual use, shooting outside on the street and on vacations, I don't want to deal with huge file sizes. And 21, 24 megapixels is more than enough for me, to be honest. Now, the kit lens bundled with this camera, I will review it separately. But the 16 to 50 kit lens on this is amazing. It really redefined my expectations on what a kit lens should be. Because the old kit lenses, 18-55mm, on Nikon and Canon DSLRs in the past, they were very mid, very average, and they were pretty bad when it comes to corner sharpness and levels of chromatic aberration. But this lens, for being such a tiny lens, it really surprised me on how sharp it is. But yeah, I'll discuss more about the lens in a separate review. All I can say right now is that if you are buying a Z30 or any Nikon DX camera, don't buy the body only, pick it up together with the 16 to 50 if you can. Autofocus performance in photography is perfectly workable, perfectly usable. It is no Nikon Z8 or Z9. I enjoy using this camera on the streets so much, even for landscape and so on. This is definitely not a camera you would use for sports or wildlife photography. It is not designed for that. There is no viewfinder. If you were to shoot with a rear screen and a huge lens in front, your posture is not very stable, not ideal. And maybe if you were to try to photograph something that is moving very erratically, for example, a toddler, a baby running around right and left, back and forth, then it might struggle a bit. But at the same time, I find the AF performance on this thing in photography and also in video to be ever so slightly better than my first generation Nikon Z6. For anyone who is aspiring to be a content creator, you want to film videos for YouTube, it is still a valid option, especially if you are not the kind of person who edits your video very heavily. Let's be honest over here. Your audience does not care whether your video is 10 bits, whether you clipped the highlights or not. They don't care. The content of your video matters more than how nice it looks. That is the case most of the time. So, 10 bits video, log video, that is all cool. It is important for filmmakers, for cinematographers, but for content creators, not always a must-have, depending on what your own personal standards are. The second kind of people I would highly recommend the Z30 to: street photographers and also landscape photographers. Especially those of you who want to carry a very lightweight camera and small lens, Z30 is a very valid option. Hey, this thing is weather sealed, just use a weather sealed lens in front of it. Now, as for lens selection, I know that native Nikon DX lenses are very limited, but the Chinese has you covered. Viltrox especially. Their 13mm 1.4 Pro amazing lens, 27mm 1.2, 75 1.2. All of those are available for Nikon DX, and the image quality on those lenses are amazing. If you are looking for something so specific like a f2.8 zoom lens, then yes, Nikon Z does not have any. But if you want bright prime lenses, it is no longer an issue with Nikon Z. If you are on a budget, there's Viltrox 56mm 1.7, for example. That thing is like under $200. So lens selection is not an issue on Nikon DX at all. And for that reason, I can really recommend the Z30 today in year 23, year 24 and beyond even. If you can score one for a very good price, currently The Z30 can be had with the 16 to 50mm kit lens for like $600, $600 to $650 which is extremely reasonable. Until then, if you found this review to be helpful or informative, yeah, give this video a like, subscribe to this channel for more photography and gear contents. And until then, I'll see you guys again very soon. Goodbye.